So, good, whatever it is, whatever your time zone says, it's time to get together and meet in Dhamma. So I'll already offer the incense and begin with the opening homage. Patipanno yasa bhagavato sāvaka sangho Namayang bhagavandam sadhammam sasangham Imehi sangare diyanarahang aro Videhe abheputayama Sadhu no bhante bhagava sutira parini bhutopi Bhajima janatan gam manasam Ime sangare do katapana karabonde katigan hatu Namaham dikaranam vinaya sankhaya Arahang samma sambuddho bhagava Buddham bhagavanta vivādi Svakato bhagavanta dhammo dhammang namasam Sopatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho sanghang namāmi Namayam buddhasa bhagavato bhuvavakanamakaraṁ namasi Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa So let's take some time to contemplate our minds, mental content. Whether it's just spinning around or incisive, bright, dark, congested, passionate, flat, happy. Yeah. Not trying to change it or explain it or blame it on anyone or blame it on yourself. Just this is a mental state, a mental continuum. Causes and conditions bring it here. Nature of mind is to be affected, sensitive. And we all inherit certain psychological attitudes. You know, what should and shouldn't be happening. What we want to have happen. Pause, let's widen. Yeah. And finding a resting place where you're not constantly engaging, tightening, being pressed by mental content, being pushed or driven by mental content. This already is a major practice. Sometimes you use the body, long out breath, space around you, and opening your eyes and just, it's this now. And it's all so personal, and yet if you sum it up, you recognize it's something everybody experiences. Yeah. It's like a universal breath being blown down a personal flute. So it sounds personal. And the flute's not the problem with the flute. It's like that. Could one's breath be a long out breath? A long in breath? And just not blowing down that same tube. What is needed so we're not fascinated or repelled about mental content, feeling the energy of it. What kind of energy or attitude or space is necessary to let that level become more level, steady, settled, settling, the exuberance or irritations, or often it's qualities of unhappiness are most often the things that dog us. We haven't been able to come to terms with. Dukkha. Instead of just going into reactivity. There's so much need to find a place where one can, where the citta can know itself, its spaciousness, its steadiness. From there, qualities of goodwill, compassion, relinquishment tend to arise by themselves.
Brahma Chaloka Dipati Sahampati Katanjali Anativaramaya Chata Santida Sata Paraja Kajatika Desetu Damam Anukampimam Padam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So today, at least in Britain today, it's the Asala Puja, which means the several things. It's commemorating the day when the Buddha first taught the teaching of the Four Noble Truths to the 5 disciples in Deer Park at Isipatane near Benares. So this occurs every year, and the solar calendar changes, but this time it's July 5th. And tomorrow is the beginning of what's called the Vasa, which is the 3-month season, or three months of the 4-month season that the summoner disciples are committed to staying in one place, which is not pretty normal these days. This year the bus has been 6 months long already. So we're locked down again. Oh dear. um, and this is, but actually we're kind of choosing to be, for the sake of several things. I think nowadays it's partly because it's a time when we really can get together and talk about training. And it's also in the time of the Buddha, at the time, if the bhikkhus or the bhikkhunis stayed in one place, the local people get support. Oh, right, they're there, because normally they'd be moving around. So now there they are, so you can come there. You know where to focus. So it's a really good time to strengthen the transmission and the training in Dhamma. So for this reason, it's often one of the features of Avasa is what's called the principle of aditana. Aditana means a higher foundation, or a complete or a fuller. Tana means a foundation or a ground. So you make a strong foundation, strengthen your foundation. And in English, this word is translated as resolution. You make a resolve, means this is what you do, you stay with it. And so for this time, you might decide you're going to give up something you rather enjoy that isn't really necessary, but it's kind of fun. Just for the sake of it, just stop. And or you might pick up something. Well, I think I need to generate a little more time for meditation. I might switch off the internet, every day at 5 o'clock or certain days a week. You make an aditana that shapes the mind. Because otherwise the mind is generally shaped, that is driven, pressed, urged, flattened, excited by random impingement, by just what the world is doing. So if you don't make an aditana, or in terms of Dhamma, you end up having a lesser tana. Your foundation is worldly, social circumstances, which is just always, as you can recognize, it's always swinging around. And we're coming into a period when it seems that a lot of real strong social upheaval. So there really isn't much of a foundation one can find in that. So you make a foundation resolve. And it's a useful principle. What you resolve is up to you, but the fact of resolving means you make a determination to literally shape your mind. So for this period of time, the mind's not going to go into that or that. When I talk about shaping your mind, most people's mind, mind of an untrained mind is rather like this kind of shape. Changes shape, gets very intense, and then scatters and spinning around. When it's highly focused, it's this shape. When it's relaxed, it's this shape, maybe. When it's happy, it's like this. But in normal circumstances, those shapes are changing all the time. The span of the mind and the drive of the mind, the energy of the mind is being shaped by circumstance. And the result of that is that one's mind inhabits that shape, rather like you pour water into a particular mold or track. And then that track gets deeper and the water flows down it. If you put something like a gel into a mold, then you take the mold away, the gel holds the same shape. Mind is like this plasma. So you put it into a certain shape, even if you take things away, it retains that shape. And the understanding is, that then determines what you think about, because you don't think of things outside your box. The mind doesn't reach out to subtler levels of experience, like equanimity becomes a lost term, or joy It becomes, the business model is progress, performance, production, so forth. So our mind is shaped by social trends, and we're trying to say, well, these don't really go anywhere that finally that fruitful. It just, so you're actually being molded and shaped by circumstances that weren't really set up for awakening at all, and often not even set up for your welfare. Really, there's a few, little tidbits, but it's not necessarily set up for the individual fruition. It's set up to get things done. So, just saying these things. Then understanding is, well, that's obviously limits your freedom and your potency, because your mind doesn't acknowledge things outside of its frame of reference, outside of its box. It doesn't acknowledge qualities, or doesn't even touch them or reach them. Qualities outside that. And this we can see is psychological. In the Buddhist understanding, it's even cosmological. It means that there are other realms that we become blind to, spiritual realms, supernatural realms, that we do not see and have no contact with, because our minds have lost that particular channel. And even things like samadhi is not so common, because the mind has lost its potential for that particular very steady, broad, comfortable shape. It doesn't know what that is. It's lost touch with that as a possibility. We can recognize in severely traumatized circumstances, say children are brought up with violence around them, do not know what trust means. They may have heard the word, but they don't have a reference to that experience. And then this naturally, we're breeding people who then are no longer have access to the full range of human potential. And this then goes on to the next life. You don't believe in rebirth, you don't have to, but just put that out there. Why should it stop? Nothing else stops. Why should your mind stop? It hasn't stopped all this time in your life. Why shouldn't it? What's going to make it stop? Nothing else stops. The stars, sun, earth, everything is moving through phases. So then this begins this is what we call karma, and the shaping is sankhara, is sankatas. We're conditioned, and these conditions are intimate. They're embedded in our mind, in our psyche, so that those are the go-to references that we jump into, like urgency or mistrust or irritation or despair or inadequacy, or compulsiveness, compulsive behavior that we don't really have much say over. We just suddenly say, we're in there, thrown in that. And the aim of resolution is to generate something that resists that shaping up. This could be, say, as I say, the range is huge, and of course it's up to each individual to make their own choices of that. It could be, obviously meditation is good, whatever that means, sitting quietly, sitting still. Exercise is good. Say, refraining from unskillful or useless social contact could be good. Obviously, keeping the 5 precepts is pretty much standard, otherwise you're really going to be a mess. 8 precepts is very good, because then you can really open into the qualities of the brahmacharya, which are rather special, in particular non-sensual dimension that your citta can open into. It's rather cool and open and wide. If you can cultivate that. But it takes quite a lot of resolution. It might be a resolution to just take a walk every day, just get out of being so intense and busy. Just say, this time you've got to do this for half an hour, you've got to go for a walk or do some exercise. So these are not necessarily what we don't call them spiritual, because everything's spiritual if you take it deep enough. You know, that's the point of adhitthana, is it can take an ordinary circumstance. If you hold it, it goes spiritual, because spirituality is the depth of mind. And the nature of adhitthana means you stay with something, it's going to take you deeper. You know? Because what happens when you resolve something is, first of all, yeah, I'm going to do this, it's really going to me to do it. Yeah, going to do it. And then, keep doing this, how long for? Perhaps I could do it a little less often. Or we find reasons not to do it. Or, well, it's a crazy idea anyway, you know, what's the point of this? I think I've learned what I need to know. So you determine this for a month or 3 months or a year or whatever. And then your mind starts to find reasons why you don't really want to do that, or it's pointless, or you finished it, or you've done what you need to do or something. So you might always start, it's interesting. And it's always justifiable, because the mind's good at that. But what's happening is the mind it feels like it wants to go back to its old pattern, its old shape. Yeah? Because it's like there's almost a pull of gravity to go back to the old samsaric habit. It's like an addiction to that. We're addicted to samsara. We're addicted to ourself. Ourself is the most potent form of addiction, not liquor or whatever. It's ourself. We go back to that. I am this, I don't need that, I want this, I want to have that. So adhitthana, often it's quite, and you start with that thing where you start to think reasons why you don't want to do it. Then you feel, you start to feel fed up, you know, when's it's going to be over? And then you feel sorry for yourself, and sometimes you start whimpering or blaming others. These are the kind of things that the mind throws up, these various strategies to shake you around. And of course, this is when you really start to bear in mind the image of the Buddha sitting under his tree, saying, I'm staying here. Puts his hand down on the ground, says, I'm going to rest on my parami, and adhitthana, holding it. And then the host of Mara saying, oh, you're wasting your time. You know, this is pointless. Where you're sitting, what you're doing here, what you're trying to prove, sitting in the dump, old forest. Why don't you go to something useful? Stop wasting your time, get a decent job, get, you know, whatever sort of stuff. You've heard it. You know, you're washed up anyway, you can't meditate. They just, no, staying here, staying here, staying here. And eventually the host of Mara is raging, staying here, staying here. And it sounds like you. It sounds like you. The host of Mara sounds like you. And you, when one of those voices comes in, you want to go to that voice and say, hello, excuse me, can you take me to Nibbana, voice? There you go. Well, no, not right now, but tomorrow, no. Can you take me to Nibbana? If you take me to Nibbana, I'll follow you. None of them take you there. So, you know, well, why I'm following you, where are you going? And some of these voices are going to despair or irritation or, you know, some people craving. They're not going to Nibbana. No thanks. And that's the model of adhitthana. And to make it something whereby, you know, you as I say, just make something you can do, because for sure it puts the pressure on. So don't be too heroic. The heroism is a kind of quiet heroism, just the fact that you stay with it for a good stretch of time. It doesn't look so fantastic. You know, it's not like you're doing amazing, mind-blowing things, but you stay with it. And that's what takes you through all the layers of the mind's resistancing and alternatives and excuses and feeling fed up and so forth, and blaming others and blaming yourself and why are you doing it. And it's quiet. That's it. You've done it. And you created a foundation, because essentially what it does is it resists the mental content. Yeah, the mental content, which is your own karmic stream. Yeah, I call it your own. It's actually a karmic stream that you identify with, right? There's an identification with. And that's the mental content with all these forms and energies and habits. And they're just staying. So that mental content then doesn't have the power to grip you. And that's it. That's it. And what is it that is ungripped? It's a very steady, cool place. It doesn't belong to anybody. If you cultivate even a fairly modest aditana, I don't know, maybe do some exercise if you don't give up sugar or stop eating candies or something. And you can go, what arose in you that made that? That was your finger touching the ground. That was your finger. No. And the quality of the mind that makes a resolve is already, and you just keep, and you get to, when you've maintained it, that is tremendous goodness and transcendent virtue in that. Stay with that. And you can keep coming back to it. This is my aditana. This is the place where I said yes, or I said no. I was definite. I stayed there. And then when things are tough, you can go back to that place. And, it's strong, but it was not self. This is very important this is why it's called a parami. It means it takes you over from the self stream into the Dhamma stream. So with this, this is what is really what transcendent means. We all know the self stream. And the self stream is the stream of becoming. And this, you can, once you begin to map this stream, to understand it, it's self, it's other people, it's the future and the past. So when your mind starts going, it's her fault, it's his fault, he should never have said that, she always does this, there's the stream. And it's suffering, right? Because what's happening is your mind is creating a perception or establishing a perception, and it's probably got absolute strong justification for that. He did do this terrible thing to me, or whatever. Absolutely true, factually. Yeah. So yeah, great. So then fix on that. Now what's happening? Now we can see that you don't have to look very far in the world to find people who can really make you feel very irritated and annoyed and upset and embittered. Yeah. What happens to you when you do that? Your mind gets snarled up. What happens to them? Nothing. So it bounces back, doesn't it? Usually, without recognizing it, you inject the quality of ill will into your heart. And the Dhamma stream, the self stream, does that. It recycles these unaware potentials for greed, for ill will, for violence, for fear, for despair, unwholesome tendency. The Dhamma stream, the person stream recycles those. And as it recycles, and we don't see it because it says, but he's that. That's really bad. That's terrible. How dare he? She's like that. Oh no, they think this of me. Who are you talking about? So we get these very strong images of people which again is absolutely understandable. But you look into the stream of Dhamma, what's happening in your heart? Is it possible that could, they don't have to change, because they might not, particularly in the past. If you remember things that people did do to you 5 years ago, that's not going to change. Where does it change? In this Dhamma stream. Now, the Buddha is saying, all this dukkha of experience is dependently arisen. And he says the original cause you can't find. You can trace it back, saying, well, she did this. He said, why did she do that? Because he did that to her. Why did he do that? Because he was told to this way. So it just goes back and back and back, yeah? And you can't, to places you can't reach it. So he says, rather than try to figure out who's right and wrong and why, the beginning you can get in touch with is the arising of it in your embodied mind. You're feeling agitated, you're feeling excited, you're feeling, that's the bit you can deal with. Not saying it's your fault, not saying you don't have justification for it, that other historical incidents didn't occur. But if you want to get out of suffering now, you can't rely on history, and you can't rely upon the future. Who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't change. But you can't hang around for that. So you've got to access it right here. And this is what all these parami, if you adhitthana, determine, because determination adhitthana accompanies all the other parami. Skip and morality, doesn't matter. Don't lie. Don't curse, and so forth. 10 parami, we could talk about that for a week, but I trust you got some understanding of that. Then you determine that not to go into unwholesome states that will actually be to your welfare, to be to your ill, will not do you any good, will actually hamper your mind, so it loses the capacity to deal with the dukkha, and it becomes an ingrained pattern that your mind will go to very readily. Resentment, jealousy, feeling inadequate, mistrustfulness, despair, self-pity, things that you just go to, because that's the pattern you hold against it, which often means finding a way in which you can find a foundation where you can stand and practice with that. Practice is always something like a certain widening of awareness, non-involvement with the content, not dismissing the content, but with experiencing the content in as it is in the here and now, happening in your heart and mind. As soon as it becomes her fault, therefore what she did, you've lost it. As soon as it becomes my fault, I'm such a nasty person, I shouldn't be this way, that's not it either. As soon as it's going to be, well, in the future it'll be better, no. As soon as it goes into, well, 5 years ago, if we've only been that way, that's not going to do it either. Those 4 references, self, other, future, past, take over, you can ensure that you're going to start experiencing suffering and probably feel it, and yet still not really be able to unravel it. This is adhitthana. So sometimes adhitthana is just determining to relax. For people who are just so pressurized, business people, really workaholic people, just spend half an hour every day just doing nothing. I remember when I was very busy as an abbot, I made an adhitthana one year to spend about 20 minutes at dawn, because dawn's a nice kind of soft time, just wandering around aimlessly, because there's so many things I had to be aiming on and getting on top of and managing and deal with. My mind would just get so, this is a monk. I'm not a business manager, you know. So people say, what are you doing? I'm doing nothing. I'm doing nothing in a determined way. I'm making a commitment to aimlessness for 20 minutes a day, just to stop my mind from frying. And one reigns, I determined not to complain, even in my mind. There's plenty of things to complain about. You live in a community. Why does he do that? He's broken. I mean, he's been told to do that. Everybody knows how to do that. What's he doing that for? Why did she tidy that up? Going on community life, because people are in their own kind of bubbles, and well, I thought everybody, no, you're supposed to do that. Oh, really? Nobody told me. We told you yesterday and the day before. Oh, really? So, so determined to stay in a community is often a great place for getting buttons pushed, because you're dealing with the motley, mingled, karmic tendencies of 20, 15, 30 people, and they're all going. So we don't, on the karmic level, it's all dysfunctionality. Communities are dysfunctional. There's nothing wrong with them, particularly. I mean, they can be dysfunctional in a kind of understanding way, whereby you make a lot of allowance, and yeah, it's okay. Or they could be dysfunctional in the way you get angry because, well, spiritual communities, because people now, and they haven't got a job to hold together. They're just with their own minds, and their minds are in their self streams. Then they don't flow in the same channel. I mean, they overlap. And so it's just a sense of making very spacious and allowing to be with that. And you can see there, if I'm complaining, then my mind is getting bitter, sour, and I'm always noticing the things that are wrong. And I'm not noticing. Every one of these people keeps the 8 precepts. I'm not noticing. Everybody came here voluntarily and they're helping out. I don't notice that. All I notice is she's 5 minutes late. He's done this. She's put her shoes in the wrong place. Small things. He talks too loud. Stop. Just because it's not the way I like it, not the way I like it right now, doesn't mean it's not valid. And that shifting out of that self stream. Now this is the one of our main themes in community life and in spiritual life in general, is this adhitthana, resolution, out of the self stream. And there's a noble fruit, because in terms of liberation, and then the Buddha's saying you have the mundane path and the supramundane path. Mundane path is when one has factors of right view, right intention, thinking, right speech, right action, right effort, right livelihood, and so on. But they're very much like, okay, now I'm doing this, and and I'm sort of getting better at this, getting better at that. And then with this, there's the possibility to say, well, I'm better than I was, and she or he is not as good as, or she or he is better than. And then self and other still occurs. So what's understood as the noble path is, you just notice this is the factor of clarity arising. This is the factor of harmlessness arising in the mind. This is the factor of virtue arising in the mind. It's not mine, because I didn't copyright this. There's no grasping at it. When there's no grasping at it, there's no creating of a self about it. There's no creating of another person who doesn't have it or is better than. And then this comparative conceit and friction ceases. This is how it's possible to live in a world of afflicted, confused beings without getting judgmental, irate, annoyed, proud, dismissing them, maintaining empathy, openness, but not because one doesn't cling to the view, one's view. One doesn't cling to one's mindsets. Therefore, when you don't, the self is not created, the person is not created. And you say, well, there's somebody there. No, that's a shape. That's a shape you can see with your eyes. I agree with that. But that shape is a shape directly now. It's not a. What do you mean by the person? I mean, and generally it comes up with certain behaviors, attitudes, speech habits. Well, those are changing karmic processes, aren't they? That's not a person. That's a changing karmic process. And they're also as you experience them. So I experience her as really brilliant and wonderful, but she doesn't. She probably thinks herself as kind of plodding along doing normal things, which is true. Her perception of herself or my perception of her. Yeah. Yeah. Which is the real person. My view of you or your own view of you. We don't need to even go there. We just need to know this is the sense of gratitude. This is a sense of admiration. This is a sense of respect. This is a sense of compassion. This is feeling irritated. Yeah, it's like this. And, don't cling. Avoid, that contraction whereby we take a stand. And in this way, suffering doesn't get hold of you. So let's just have a little finish with a sutta reference here. We got the Chatari Sutta, the Great 40. This is the middle length saying, Majjhima 117. And some of these suttas are not so easy to really immediately get, but maybe some of this helps. Where the Buddha talks about a tenfold path, which includes the samadhi, right, the whole liberation experience. It divides then, from this position, he says you can divide the path factors into two. There's right view, which is mundane, and right view, which is supramundane. What is right view that's mundane? Partaking of merit gives you an advantage. It's for your welfare, definitely for your welfare, but it tends to still have that sense of self involved with it. Right view, there is what is given, what is offered, what is sacrificed. Even bearing this in mind, saying this is important. There is given what you have been given, not what you haven't been given. Don't go there. What you have been given, your body, your breath, consciousness, functioning sense organs, freedom to a degree, focus on that. And also from that place, you do your giving. You're a given and a givable, and you have gifts. Don't ever deny it. There is what is offered. There is what is sacrificed. There's something we can be grand about. You can have it. We can let go of. We can give ourselves up. It's just this first factor, aspect of right view. Fruit and result of good and bad actions. Every thought you take has some effect. And the actions in this sense just means not just physical actions, verbal actions, but even actions inclinations of your heart that you follow, decisively engage with a heart intention. Be careful. Don't be paranoid, but be attentive to it. As long as it stays within, then you can focus on the arising of ill will or passion and just, okay, there's a warning there. You have to deal with it. If it wasn't there, you wouldn't have to deal with it. And that would be a relief, wouldn't it? So it's not by no means condoning these, because they're troublesome to have to deal with impatience and restlessness and irritation. But there is a result of that. Your mind has now got that shape, and it will go there, get familiar with that, and it will go there again and again. You get impatient with this, you get impatient with that, you get frustrated with this, and it will go there again, because now it knows the track. So you've got to actually create some good tracks. There's mother and father, there's sense of human interconnectedness, there's this world and another world. It means this isn't the end of the story. It's going to be a future, another dimension. And so this is all about the story of the self, isn't it? What I'm going to be. And what is noble supramundane, a factor of path of wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the power of wisdom, the investigation of states, enlightenment factor. So it's just really a factor of being clear in any time. And so it's got no particular aim. It's just, it is clarity in itself, and there's no self around it. That's the theme. There's no particular viewpoint. Like you can recognize when the Buddha began decided to teach, he didn't really know what to teach. First person he taught, he met, he just said something about being enlightened, and the man said, well, so what, good for you. So it took about 6 weeks of walking, and the Buddha just said, the best way to teach is just to get to where people are at and respond to it. So he didn't have a particular program, but he did have the factor of clarity, wisdom, investigation, just applying that to where people were at. Rather than, now this is Buddhism, So there's something that supramundane, and you see the supramundane is actually much more wider capacity than just good and bad actions. Now, if we cultivate like this means that one is gaining maximum capacity, maximum flexibility, just as if someone's become a plumber. So they know all about piping, but they don't know anything about dentistry or engineering. Then in a way, yeah, they're brilliant, but they've limited. Someone becomes a computer specialist, brilliant, but he knows nothing about butterflies. So in some ways, the more specialized and the more particularized one is, then also the more one leaves out. You say, well, if you cultivate mind, then that's applicable to anything that you turn your attention to, right? So you don't need to be a specialist, apart from a specialist in understanding greed, hatred, delusion, views, opinions, suffering, where it originates from, how it feels, how you get confused by it, and the themes that it brings up, the resentment, the jealousy, the blaming, despair, the I am this, I'm never that, people don't like me, and they want this, and how do I kind of brings up that, and you penetrate that, and you do that, then your mind has got maximum capacity to turn itself to anything that's necessary and pertinent. But certain things are no longer necessary or pertinent. The mind doesn't have a path to fear. It doesn't have a path to greed. It doesn't have a path to hatred. It doesn't have a path to complaining. Those paths have been cut off. That's what it's said for the Arahant. They just don't know how to do it anymore. They can't do greed, hatred, and delusion. There's no pathway because the mind has lost those constrictions, those confusions, and gained and become the path. It has become the path. It's become the Dhamma, yeah? And it's lost the world, lost the way of the world. And we bring this into the world, into our lives, into our social reactions. This is where consciousness is shifting and changing. My feeling is, I don't know, but this has got to be the way, for the welfare, a change of consciousness. We see the old systems are so brutalized and corrupt and inadequate and inefficient and unequal. The old model is wrong. It needs to be the change of consciousness. So the more that we can, in our humble way, make our resolutions to clear our own shortcomings and default patterns that generate suffering, the more we have potency to bring the beautiful into the world. And certainly the Buddha never gave up, so why should you? Okay, well, I'll stop there for today. Yeah, thank you.
Handamayam Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodam.
Okay. Hope something there is worthy of making a foundation. And yeah, as I think has probably been outlined, we're taking a pause from this Zoom stream for a few weeks. I think I could certainly use with refreshing my eyeballs. And we're going to have a bit of a group retreat in the monastery, only part of that, and just refresh and strengthen in the Dhamma. And hopefully conditions support it to be able to offer whatever teachings I can to yourselves. But remember, this is just the Zoom stream. The Dhamma stream goes on. And what we've been doing here is hopefully just trying to remember and hold in mind as a group. This is it's not individual. It's not like something I've only got. This is everybody has access to this. This is why the Buddha taught it. And we need to fashion that into the way we live our lives. And then this will be for our immense benefit and happiness. So I'll just take a few minutes silence to finish the session, 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, pay our respects to the Triple Gem, and I think if some of you would be interested in making a formal commitment to or refreshing your commitment to the precepts, then there'll be I think called a breakout room or something where we can meet to make those determinations, and that will follow on from this. So those of you who'd like to enter that room, I think Peter will probably have that figured out. I don't, but I do know what the precepts are. Okay, so let's conclude with the final homage. Dhamma Sambodho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivanti Vagato Bhagavatman Dhammo Dhammam Namasam Patipanno Bhagavando Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Okay.